So the mind cannot see itself. So to see the mind, and by the way, it doesn't even exist. I even wrote a paper on this when I was 20 years old, believe it or not, and I didn't even know I'd come across a diamond, right? Didn't even know it. Stumbled right across it, right? I was down at UC Irvine, a quarter system, they go past real fast, about nine and a half weeks. I had a class in cognitive psychology, and he asked for an essay every week. And so my first essay was that the mind is an epiphenomenon, which is fancy language for it doesn't exist. Phenomenons are real, epiphenomenons aren't. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's pseudo, it's false. 2 pages, he gave me an A-. It was all right there in that 20-year-old, but here I've come all these years to kind of keep rediscovering what I knew back then. But I didn't value it, did I? And I wasn't inhabiting it either, if the truth be known. That's called embodiment. There's the realization, right, where you become aware of something, and that's wonderful, and it comes, it goes, it does what it does. And there's another thing to be living it, embodying it, and that's its own journey, isn't it? That's its own journey. So witnessing and presence, and witnessing can only occur in times of being present, by the way. There's no other way it can happen. Changes the very axis of the world, changes everything. It's never the same afterwards. And I'm not joking about that. I mean that very seriously. And it's a wonderful change, by the way. Maybe you remember this guy. He wrote a book. He was actually up in Vancouver. Before that, he was over in Cambridge. And he was a mess. He was 29 years old, very bright guy, and he'd had panic attacks, anxiety, and depression for years. And here he is, jettisoned awake at 3 in the morning with a panic attack. I don't know if anybody's experienced a panic attack. It's very frightening. It's like your body is turning on you, you're doom and gloom, you're about ready to die. You're sweating, shortness of breath, heart palpitations, all that stuff. But this time it was different. He was able to see what he called his unhappy me, which is, of course, his ego, right, his mind, who was making everything unhappy, right? And that was pretty amazing. You'd never seen that before, ever. But even something even more brilliant. He was able, because he was a bright guy, he was able to say, well, if I can see my unhappy me, well, gee, that can't be who I am. Who knew? And at that moment, it got a lot quieter. He was able to go back to sleep. He almost never did that. I woke up the next morning, still in that same state of presence, right? By his report, 80–90% of all thoughts had vanished, and he had this very direct experience of life. And life is beautiful, folks. Life is miraculous. Life is brimming over with vitality and energy and all sorts of things, right? But he had never really experienced that. So he just walked around noticing all that, in kind of a state of bliss. His name was Eckhart Tolle, and he wrote a book called The Power of Now 10 years later about that whole experience. And it's a very powerful manifesto on being in the present moment. I cannot too highly recommend it. But it's the weirdest book because you can read it 100 times and you still won't get it. No, it's weird. Oprah read it 10 times on her bedstand, she said. You only get the book if you're present while reading it. Isn't that weird? Again, it's a mindset, because if you're in some other mindset other than the present, it'll be gobbledygook. Oh, that was nice, you know, so what? And so if you read it very slowly and you take the time to even breathe, right, and get present, and just read like a couple paragraphs or a page or two, and go through the whole book like that, and then do it again. It took Oprah 10 times till she was present to the entire book. And that's not bad. That's okay. Strangest book.